Thank you for coming to the August 8th Avon Town Council meeting, and let's start with our pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Robert Pope.
Present. Amy.
Bill Holland.
Here.
Jason Puckett.
Present.
Don Loudon.
Present.
Greg Zuzan.
Present. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions regarding the items on the consent agenda? With no questions, is somebody prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda to include the check register for today and the approval of our meeting minutes on July 24th as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope.
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Jason Puckett.
4.
Greg Zuzan.
4.
Bill Holland.
4. Next item on the agenda is the first of 2 public comment opportunities. The public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. If you come forward, please state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Tom Downard. I'm the Executive Director of the Avon Chamber of Commerce, 8244 East US Highway 36 in Avon, Indiana, and also coming to you tonight as a previous convenience store owner in Avon, just off Dan Jones in US 36. One of our roles as the Chamber of Commerce is certainly to bring business to our community or help bring business to our community. And I think the town of Avon has certainly done a great job of that over the last several years. But not, or just as important with that is that you also bring quality businesses to our community. And I think Wawa is one of those quality businesses. You look at, if you delve deeper into Wawa, in my previous experience as convenience store owner, employees are there for a little bit and they're gone. Whether they're graduating up, moving on, those types of things. Statistically at Wawa, those employees are there 7 years. They're there for a reason for 7 years. It's a great place to work, employee stock ownership. Those are the types of businesses that we want in our community. So we're excited about that opportunity to have them there. One of the issues that I've heard through the vine over the last couple months is it being a 24-hour location, and is that a negative situation? Again, from my past experience as a convenience store owner right in Avon, we never had a security issue in our 24-hour location. Quite honestly, we would have some of Hendricks County's deputies, some of Avon's staff as well, in the middle of the night come because they wanted to get out of their car, they wanted to have a cup of coffee, they wanted to do their logs, what have you. So I think that was a great benefit to us, and I think that will be a continued scenario with Wawa. You know, one of the things as a chamber director, and you hear throughout the community, through residents, is, man, there's a lot of traffic on Rockville Road, right? Ryan and the state of Indiana did a nice job of widening that to 3 lanes, but there's still a lot of traffic on Rockville Road, right? We all can attest to that. I think it's important that we do, moving forward, we put businesses in place that alleviate some of that traffic on Rockville Road. With this specific intersection that we're talking about, actually a roundabout that is just removed from the roundabout, we've got a subdivision, brand new subdivision approved that's going to the west. We've got at least 1, if not 2 subdivisions off 21st Street to add to that area. You want a gallon of milk, do you want to have to go back all the way to Rockville Road and deal with that to get your gallon of milk? Or would it be nice to be able to go right here within your own community? Again, options, convenience, and those types of things. Very, very important. That, again, talking about that location, right? The town, I quite honestly don't know, a year, 2, 3 years ago, decided to put self-storage there. That in and of itself makes that a commercial area. So within that roundabout and that area, you've got a Duke substation, a school, a church, and now commercial use. If it's not Wawa, will it be a retail center with 8 uses in it? Traffic, right? Same thing, one of the concerns that some have. So I think, again, you've got a one-stop use as opposed to multiple uses. I know our previous town planner, Bill Peoples, which we loved, right? He approved this project. He was in favor of he was in favor of this project. Again, the project makes great sense. I respectfully ask the council to consider it in a favorable fashion as we move forward with our great community partner, Wawa. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm a little shorter. I'm Larry Cranfield Development, 3895 North 575E, Brownsburg, Indiana. I have no financial connection to Wawa whatsoever, but I'm going to say a couple things about them. And frankly, Tom, you did a great job, I think. What's my connection with Avon? I built the first shopping center in Avon in 1987. I was told I was a pipe dreamer. Nobody would stop in Avon. Avon was just a burg on the road as people went to the county seat of Danville, Indiana. I built a second shopping center also at Dan Jones Road and US 36, and then built my first community. It was my first community to build. I was told by Hendricks County, do you know your community is going to have 3 addresses? Part of it is going to be Danville, Indiana. Part of it's going to be Plainfield, Indiana. And part of it's going to be Indianapolis, Indiana. Can you imagine 176 houses all together with 3 addresses like that? So I said, what can I do? And I found the right people to talk to in the postal system. And I got a couple of other people also to work with me on this. And after X number of months, Avon became Avon, Indiana 46123. So I have a strong connection to Avon. When I was here in Avon to start things, 36 was a 3-lane highway, as you know. Now it's a 7-lane and counting. They're going to be maybe making some modifications to that in the next 3 or 4 years. So that means a lot of people now are taking an alternate route, which is 100 North. So there's a lot of traffic. I don't have to tell you that on 100 North. I think one of the highest and best uses you could have on the corner of Dan Jones and 100 North would be a good gas station. And if you're going to have a good gas station convenience store, I can tell you this because I've been familiar with Wawa for years, because I travel up through their territory a lot going to Canada fishing trips. They're known to have the best food around. And on the Northeast, in the Northeast, a lot of people eat at gas stations, much more so than here. But they do, they have great food. Secondly, they're a super well-run company that's very proud of their projects. They keep them up. There's a couple of new gas stations between Avon and Brownsburg. Look at their landscaping. It lasted for about a month, and it's nothing but weeds now. You're not going to see that with Wawa. They're proud of what they do. And then the last thing, which is kind of interesting, Wawa in Ojibwe language means wild goose. And consequently, they pay homage to the wild goose by not having a flat canopy over their gas pumps, but an angled one to look like a wing of the wild goose. So it's interesting tidbit there. But anyway,
I can honestly say, having 2 shopping centers just down the street, I'd love to have them as a part of the community because they're good people. Thanks.
Good evening. John McDavid, 726 Foxborough Drive, Avon. Full disclosure, I do represent clients who would be selling property if this were to go through. I just want to touch on one thing in particular, and that is Tom touched a little bit about what a great employer Wawa is. They're also a great community member. I had a chance to speak with the area regional manager, who also sits on the foundation board for Wawa. And they have 5 different ways you can get that they will either issue grants or help to fund community organizations. When they become a part of a community, they just don't have a store. They really want to become a part of the community. And I tell you, when we get these business partners in the community who are willing to give both in kind and financially, it really helps the organizations. And here I'm speaking as a band parent as we prepare to go to Macy's this year, a very expensive endeavor. And that is the type of thing that Wawa would, the foundation would help out with, and probably the local owner as well. So I urge you to approve this. I think it would be a great addition. I'll say one thing on traffic. I don't know how many of you come in from the east, but it's become a lot worse in the last several months. How far west the backup extends during rush hour. It wasn't that way 10 years ago, on 36 I'm talking. So to force more traffic down there to go get milk, to go fill up with gas, doesn't seem to me to be the best thing to do. Thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Good evening. My name's Stan Wright, 8099 East, County Road 100 North. My property is going to be right next to the buffer for Wawa. I am 100% in favor of this. They have assured me that they will be a great neighbor, and we have come to understand how they're going to make sure that our property still stays private, and with a tremendous buffer that they're going to put in to help keep light and sound away from us. I also have to, during the wee hours of the morning, I have a dog I have to take care of that he gets me up at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Because that's how he is now. And when I'm out front taking care of him, I can't stand out there for maybe 30, 40 seconds. And there is traffic at all hours on 100. And Dan Jones heading south, traffic heading east and west. And how would it be so convenient for some of these folks? Stop in, get a little bit of fuel, get a drink, shake, and proceed on their way. And with me living right around the corner, heavens, that'll be great for us just to walk around the corner and get a shake. I'm all in favor of this. Please take this into consideration and let's bring them in as a great neighbor. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Wilson, 8093 East County Road 100 North, Avon. Would like to quickly go through the packet in front of you. On page 2, you will find in blue the property my wife and I own, which is part of this project. If you could please turn to page 3 as I address a few of the main concerns mentioned by planning staff and plan commission. First, 24/7 operating hours. On page 4, you will find a breakdown of the recently adopted gasoline service station addition to the UDO. This was voted on and approved by the town council less than 9 months ago, with operating hours restrictions being 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. if it abuts a residential property. No restrictions on any other operating hours were defined. If there were any concerns regarding 24/7, they could have been addressed at that time when that was being implemented. Of note, this Wawa will not abut residential and turn should not have restriction on hours of operation. Next noted, concern involved the size of the Wawa on the lot. As you can see on page 5, maximum lot coverage allowed is 50%. This project is only 18.3%. Thus, the project clearly meets lot requirements and building placement requirements defined by the UDO. The last noted concern I would like to address is from the current planning director that C2 is too intense near a church, schools, and residential uses. I have included the 3.2 permitted use table from the UDO on page 6, which highlights C1 and C2 permitted uses only. Of note, on the left in green are 17 uses that carry the same use distinction in C1 and C2. Perhaps this is why all other approved neighborhood retail clusters heavily support C2 as it provides flexibility. In fact, of the numerous businesses that make up the commercially neighborhood retail clusters, there is a sole business that is zoned C1. Ironically, it is the 24-hour Speedway gas station at 10th and Avon Avenue. To further elaborate, page 7 shows the land use cluster map adopted in 2017. There are 6 neighborhood retail land use clusters in the town of Avon, which are highlighted in orange. We will focus on the 3 that have commercial zoning assigned to them. The other 3 have no commercial development yet. Page 10, Avon Avenue 100 North. There's a 24-hour Speedway gas station with a church nearby. Page 11 shows the zoning map for this cluster, which is primarily C2. However, note again, Speedway is C1. Next, page 12, 36, and Avon Avenue. This has a Kroger gas station open 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. directly next to a church. Also, there's a 24-hour Circle K in close proximity to 3 schools. Page 13 shows this area as C2 zoning. The last neighborhood retail cluster with defined zoning is on page 14, and that's at Avon Avenue and 150 South, where the entire northeast corner is zoned C2 as depicted on page 15.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. Last sentence here. Upon review, it appears that C2 is not too intense for this area and contrasted is appropriate for the neighborhood retail clusters. There are summary points noted on page 16. However, it comes down to this. Based on the guidelines provided by the town and adhered to by
Your 3
Wawa.
minutes. Everyone gets the same amount of time. Your 3
Okay.
minutes is up.
All right, thank you.
My name's David Deary, 925 North County Road, 800 East. Fully support this project. In my view, the whole project, the Wawa, it just makes sense. It complies with the 2017 commercial zoning that was done in the future plan sometime long ago. As they've mentioned, Dan Jones is already quite busy, so and y'all recognize that because you put plans in place many years ago to widen the road out. So I'd like to say, people sitting there waiting on traffic, they can pull in and get a coffee, gas, whatever, right there. And also many have heard about Wawa and its employment record, which is outstanding for a convenience store. Many times I've been down to the Speedway down on, right down the road there on 236. And many times, especially on a weekend, they're closed in the middle of the day. Sign on the door says restocking. So obviously they can't keep enough employees to stock the store and they have to close it. So, I mean, I think Wawa would be outstanding in that particular area there. And also, there's not that much residential in that area. Now, y'all is building some homes down there, but there's a church and school and things, so I don't really see that being an issue. And as mentioned, the 24-hour operation, like you say, you have local law enforcement stopping in there all hours, different times of night, get a coffee. Their presence there kind of helps deter crime also. Not that there would be crime, but just saying that I'm sure they would enjoy it. And I really don't see an issue with the 24-hour. Also, I mean, that storage building right next door, it's 24-hour also. It was 24-hour from day one. But like I say, the project just makes sense for Avon and help with traffic congestion off 36, and it just makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come forward during this first public comment opportunity? If not, then we'll close that portion of the agenda and move on to department updates. Mr. Moore.
Steve Moore, Public Works Director. First thing I'd like to talk about is our 2024 Community Crossings paving project. We're going to get started on Monday with some concrete ramps and some drives going, and they're going to lay out some asphalt. They're going to start on 150 North and then 200 North. And we're going to do some drainage along with the paving on 150 North. That's probably the only road that I know of that really overtops in our whole town when we get some good rain. So, along with the paving, we're actually going to do some drainage work too. Raceway Road, 900 North roundabout. The right-of-way engineering is complete now. All parcels are done. We are now into appraising and land acquisition. Working on the corner parcels first, because that's where we only have like 5 parcels we're really going to have to acquire from, and not much from any of them. So we're working on that right now. 900 East at Angelina Way roundabout. We're into land acquisition or right-of-way acquisition there as well, and that should go to bid sometime over this winter. Dan Jones Road Phase 2, some really good progress, even with the rain. We have the first layer of asphalt done north of 150. We've got curbs on both sides of the road. Now they're moved over to 150 and they're doing drainage there. Should be done with that hopefully this week, tomorrow. Then they'll start drainage on the Dan Jones south of 150 and making really good progress. Dan Jones Road Phase 3. We're still under field check plans, and then we're conducting the environmental and utility coordination, and that should bid early 2025. Stormwater utility, we're almost done with the Avon Heights project. I would say tomorrow will be like 99.9% done. And then we'll pave that as we continue through our CCMG project. For training, Eli passed his 3rd NDOT certification. He has 3 more to go, and then he'll be fully NDOT certified for inspection. Keaton and Eli have been inspecting all of our projects, including the Avon Heights project. So it's good to have our own in-house inspectors. Betsy's been completing more additional MS4 training, and she led us today going in a review and preparing for our IDEM inspection later this month. So we've been to all our facilities today, and hopefully we're in good shape. I attended a mandatory ADA coordinators meeting in Indy. I'm a former ADA consultant, and based on what I saw there, I think we're in pretty good shape. So it was good to know. Reports, MS4 inspections. Drew and Eli completed 67 inspections last month, and we only had to assess one $1,000 fine. Eli and Keaton installed 34 traffic and street signs. And they try to straighten like a sign every day. So I think if you drive around, I think our signs are in a lot better shape than they've been for a long time. Keaton and Eli conducted 23 right-of-way inspections. Eli and Keaton filled potholes only at 4 locations. I've saw a couple of them that might need some help, but we're doing really well. We don't have a lot to do because we're keeping good tabs on it. And then fall street sweeping will probably commence next week, so it could be done before Labor Day. So, questions?
Any questions for Mr. Moore?
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, Shelby Pride, Parks and Recreation Director. I don't have much tonight. I just want to compliment all of the town staff, the police department, you guys as the town council and our community for one of the best national night outs that we have had. I'm sure Chief Stoops is going to talk more in depth about it, but I sit on that committee. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's just a night that is just wonderful. So thank you guys for allowing Avon to host that. Thank you to the community for coming out, and thank you to the police department for allowing us to be a part of it. That's all.
Thank you. Linda.
Hello, Linda Albrand, Planning Director. We have been hard at work on the comp plan. The website is complete. We've reviewed it and approved it, and it should be launching live in a few days. Our yard sign program is going forward. We've working on a couple amendments to the sign, but we'll be placing yard signs out, informing the public of the comp plan, public places, schools, parks, obviously. We might reach out to a few churches as well. We have a public survey that has been reviewed and approved, and that will go live in a few days. There will be a link on our website, a link on the comp plan website, and a QR code on the signs, on the yard signs. We are in the process of forming focus groups for the comp plan. This is an opportunity for the consultant to receive feedback on certain topics, and then the focus groups are about 10 to 12 people who are from Avon, familiar with Avon, who can participate. They usually have a specialized knowledge in the topic to give input to the comp plan. Those topics are transportation, housing and neighborhoods, parks and open space, economic development, arts, culture, placemaking, all things US 36, which include a gateway, infrastructure, access, beautification, and then movement of goods and people. Then we're going to have one on jurisdictional relations, including utilities, and then one on our UDO itself. So if you have anybody that you know might want to participate, it's kind of a one-shot thing. It's not an ongoing meeting process. And they probably will be virtual so people can participate from their place of work or home. If you have anybody that would be interested in any of those topics or can provide input for any of those topics, please email me or call me or reach out to me some way so we can get those focus groups formed for the comp plan. As far as cases go, we have one new rezoning case this month that's been filed. Will be introduced at your next meeting in 2 weeks. There is a PUD text amendment that will be in 2 weeks as well. That's already been recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. Then there's one zoning amendment and one PUD amendment going to the Planning Commission at the end of this month. And those will be heard by the council sometime in September. And finally, Paul completed a complete rehaul of our applications because when we got here, we found that a lot of them were not updated since the UDO was implemented. Many of the findings didn't match what the UDO had. So we've all gone through and overhauled them. The drafts are done. We're getting ready to launch those on the website soon. So, you have any questions?
Any questions for Linda? Thank you for your hard work. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
John Taylor, Economic Development. I attended a logistics forum in Colorado last week. There were 52 people there, 9 site selectors. I got the opportunity to meet with each site selector face to face, and 2 of them I've sent information that they have projects that may take a look at Avon. But what was funny was, I mean, I talked to just about everybody at that conference, and everybody's talking about how they're dying for investment. And so the gentleman that runs that conference asked me if I'd give a presentation of what's happening in Avon. So lots of people heard about all that's going on in Avon. A week and a half ago, we have groundbreaking for Easton Gray, $683 million, 500 acres, 1,400 housing units, 66 acres of retail and entertainment, and new town hall, new civic center. It can be a great addition to this community. Then we had last Thursday a groundbreaking for Project Winston, or what was formerly known as Project Winston, now Sephora. Sephora was a $200 million investment. The company, I think we just met some really great people at that groundbreaking, and I indicated to them I was hoping that they could become a real partner in our community, and the gentleman that I work with said, John, you just need to tell us what you need, and as we get there and get involved, we'll be really involved in the community. And this is 425 jobs, and they're going to hire probably, if they can find 80 to 100 people that have certain handicaps. They've learned throughout their system how to deal with people with handicaps and schedule them properly, get them to and from work and all that. And I just think, when I think about the people in our community, this will really be great for all of us. If you want to see what it's like to spread concrete, starting tomorrow, they'll be moving 330 cubic yards each day for the next 19 days. So if you want to get out and get dirty and see what it looks like, Mike was telling me a day that this is just going to be very, very busy. Mark Watsky from IEDC was part of our groundbreaking 2 weeks ago, and I talked to him, and we're going to bring some IEDC people out here in October to see what's going on and tour some buildings. And when I was at the Department of Commerce many years ago, I found that if I was familiar with the building, it was easier when I'm talking to a client to say, out in Avon, they've got this 710,000 square feet, versus you send them a note and they say, yeah, they got buildings in Avon. They can talk about it. So we're going to bring them out and tour the facilities and then tour the community. And but I just think we got more to come. I mean, this has been a great month, but we've got more to come. There's going to be a lot of things happening now that we're starting to see things moving. And if I can just find something to go into the 1 million square foot building on 100 South, I know that the Mormon Church will begin in their next building. Right now, they're just hesitant because big buildings throughout the country are sitting empty, but we're working hard to find somewhere for that building. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Chief Stoops.
Excuse me. Thank you and good evening. Sean Stoops, Chief of Police with the Avon Police Department. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for all of your participation and assistance with our National Night Out that we had last week that Shelby so graciously spoke about already. We do want to give out some special thanks this evening. First of all, we do want to thank all of our town staff that helped and assisted. There's way too many names to go through them, but especially the Parks Department, Chuck, Lorenzo, Rudy, those guys were out there working days before the event, during the event, and after the event. I don't think I saw Shelby out there doing that much, so we'll still thank her, but okay. We also want to thank our partners at the Avon Community School Corporation for allowing us to have that event there for the second year in a row. That venue really makes it great for us to have both indoor and outdoor options available. We want to give a personal thanks to Gary and Bev Ackman, members of our community who have been some of our steadfast supporters for this program. They donate a ton of time, money, and effort. Gary's one of our best fundraisers. He goes out there and beats on the community doors and goes out there and gets prizes and donations and everything. So we actually gave him an Avon police shirt this year. So if you see him out driving around in that shirt, he's probably trying to get out of a speeding ticket. The Avon American Legion was always a big part of our program out there, and we really appreciate their participation. Anybody that knows Zach, he's kind of behind the scenes on this event as well, so we want to thank him. All of our partners in law enforcement, the Indiana State Police, Hendricks County Sheriff's Office, Avon Fire Department, not only for their participation there, but they provide all the water for the dunk tank, so we appreciate that as well. All of our sponsors and vendors that donated so many prizes and food for the event, but especially to all of our volunteers and all of our police officers for working that event that day and the days leading up to it, because it takes so many people to put that together to make that happen. Like Shelby said, our committee, Brian Nugent, our deputy chief, leads that committee. And it's too much for just a couple of us to do. So we started doing it that way the last couple of years, and it's really helped out to make this become more streamlined and more successful. Just a couple of stats. I think we went through about 3,000 hot dogs. I don't know how many bags of cotton candy they made, but I know the night before they made about 500, and those were gone in about 30 minutes. I personally know that I mixed about 100 gallons of funnel cake mix, and the line never stopped. We had to shut it down, so we could have kept going. So it was very successful. We think there might have been around 4,000 to 4,500 people there. So great event. Thank you, everyone that attended. Thank you, everyone that helped. If we missed anybody, I apologize, but there's just too many people to thank. Last week, our Citizens Police Academy graduated from this year's Citizens Police Academy. And they got to meet all the officers over that 8-week program. And then we did ride-alongs for about 2 weeks following the program. So it was really interesting to hear all of their stories at the graduation of everything that they experienced. Some of them had really boring nights. Some of them had really exciting nights. Some of you in the room here have been through that program, so you know what that's like. So we want to thank Lieutenant Steve Barton for planning all of the logistics for that program and being out here after hours, at least 2 or 3 nights a week, just to make that happen for 8 weeks straight. So we appreciate his time and effort being away from his family to make that possible for our community. We do have a mayor board meeting on August 12th, Monday, 7 p.m. at the Avon Police Department. You should have all of this month's data in your packet that I provided to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them regarding anything that we've spoken about.
Any questions for Chief Stoops?
Did you say they've already had their graduation party?
They did. It was last week.
Okay. I missed that one.
Thank you.
Chief. Julie, do you have anything, Clerk Treasurer?
I just closed out July today, so you guys should have those reports sitting in your email to review. I've also sent it to Greg and Ryan. Ryan and I have been working on the budget with Mr. Garitas, who's here tonight to present to you. We got all of our Form 1s over to him today. Other than that, budget is moving forward, and you'll get your first glimpse of it here in a little bit.
Suzanne, do you have anything?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to council comments and liaison reports. Mr. Holland.
Oh, I don't have anything right now. I'm sure I will when we get through all this.
Ms. Loudon.
Not to echo everyone else, but attended the Avon National Night Out. I still think it's one of the premier community events that takes place in Hendricks County, so thank you to everyone. Secondly, attended the Sephora groundbreaking. That was a lot of fun. We had a girl on stilts with umbrella. Did get some raindrops. She was the smart one for having the umbrella. After that, went to the wild egg ribbon cutting. And then also this week, I've attended 5 annexation meetings here at Town Hall. So that's it for me.
Jason.
I don't have much. Also attended the National Night Out. It was a great event, a lot of fun. Looking forward to next year. That's all I got.
Mr. Pope.
I'll jump on it. Just want to reiterate the kudos for National Night Out Against Crime. Great job, Avon PD, all the staff and the volunteers that helped make that happen. It's a lot of work, so great job. And as Dawn mentioned, she and I attended Sephora's groundbreaking last week, and I'm very excited to welcome them to the Avon community. That's all I got. Thank you.
I spent probably 2 weeks out of town, so I didn't participate in a whole lot of things, but what I find interesting and very intriguing, and I think very uplifting, is to listen to the comments of Chief Stoops and listen to the comments of John Taylor and listen to the comments of Shelby Pride of such the good things that are happening in our community, and we should all be proud of that. And I think that's my takeaway from that. And then lastly, I didn't take part in all 6 of those annexation hearings, but I want to thank certainly Ryan, our town manager, and Suzanne, his executive assistant, and Dawn and Julie there's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort that goes into it, and it's a lot of boring time that is into it. So I want to thank you for that. Let's move on then to new business. It's the introduction of the 2025 budget. Mr. Cannon, Mr. Garatas. As we tell everybody, Greg, you get 3 minutes. State your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
No way.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, that was a lot less time than I told Greg he had.
Yeah, I
so.
need somebody else's 3. Good evening. My name is Greg Garatas. I'm with Financial Solutions Group based here in Hendricks County. So I serve as your independent financial advisor. And tonight we're going to kind of introduce what we normally do each and every year is we work through a lot of the numbers, and actually we spent an entire day here in the office, one of my staff members and I, and looked at how we're doing the first half of this year. We even on that day also met with DLGF, and then we also met with Julie and the police chief. So we got a lot done in that day, and as of June 30th, the town looks very good and very good health financially. Again, my comments are always financial. And so I think we're heading in the right direction. So since then what we did is we took the numbers back, and I had one of our senior managers kind of review what we put together on that day. We got it into some of the preliminary information. The worksheets are all done. The miscellaneous revenues are in Gateway. We got that all updated. So, and Julie keeps a watchful eye on us in that case. And so what we're here today and we're going to present, hopefully, Ryan, is some of the not to exceeds that we're prepared to utilize in developing, and we are developing every line in the budget that you will see, later on during the publication and the approval process. So we also, I did take those, and thank you, Julie. I took the general fund and I plugged it into our sustainability model. And let me give you a little flavor of what's going on kind of in total. Now, as you know, I'm also the financial advisor to the county as a whole, and I just got done yesterday with the county council, and we've got a lot of very positive momentum going on in Hendricks County in its entirety, which also means then we've got great momentum occurring in Avon, specifically in the area of assessed value, and basically income tax. We are projecting at this point in time that income tax total pie will grow as much as 9%, which will then help us fund some of our much needed services. And by the way, we put a great emphasis on public safety within the proposed numbers that we're working through. So that's important to every community, and the number one issue I seem to be addressing all across, even in the county. What do we need to do in public safety? So, okay, then may I borrow one, because I didn't get one printed off. I worked it through the sustainability model, and what you're seeing on the document in front of you, as you see in the general fund, that's the one I'm going to focus on right now, that the ending balance did increase quite significantly. Went up from 8.6. Thank you very much, Shelby. You're good. But then I already knew that. Thank you. Yeah. Keep in mind, two things went on in that number. So before you kind of look at that number one, the interest income is up very significantly. Matter of fact, we're talking over $1.5 million. And so Julie's investing every last penny that she has and earning very substantial interest. Now, don't keep your hopes up, because if you've been listening to the news channels like Bloomberg's always on in my car, interest rates will be coming down. It's just a matter of time. Interest income rates. And so we have, as we set up the 2025 budget, we actually cut it in half because it is likely to go down this year and then next year even further. So the other thing is you did get substantial $591,000 of supplemental LIT. LIT, it stands for local income tax, and the supplemental meant all the returns that have been in the process down at the state for the last 24 months and 36 months, and people filing late and things like that. Extra dollars, extra LIT came into play, and so we received that, and that's also in that balance. So in Hendricks County, we believe that will sustain at least in the near future, because we've got a lot of employment in Hendricks County. And keep in mind, we don't have an income tax per se in Avon. It's on the county as a whole. The county council levies it, and then it is parceled out according to property tax levies here in Avon. So that $600,000 also worked into that balance. So as you see, what we've done is we've worked through this very methodically and very carefully to try and set the maximum numbers that you see in the column under the 2025 spendable level. So in other words, in the general fund, the $9 million has assumed a couple things. A pretty stable tax rate. We deal with here, I know there's a lot of people in the audience here tonight, and there's only 32 pennies out of the entire tax rate that goes to support Avon, Indiana. 32 pennies. And so those pennies, and a lot of people are saying, wow, my tax bill is going up. Well, I can tell you, our rate dropped about 1.5 pennies 3 years ago, and it jumped up 1.5 pennies last year or this year. And so we've stayed right in that 32 penny over the average period. And so your tax bill is not going up as a result of our tax rate, because it's not changing. It's basically the value of the homes, and we're catching up, our value of commercial, we're catching up here in Indiana, and we've been catching up for about 15 years, been watching it very, very closely with values. We've been always behind in Indiana, and Jason, you were in the auditor's office, so you saw it firsthand when we worked on TIF and things like that. So these are the amounts, as you see, that we're setting forth. One of the new items that we put in there is the 2024 road bond. What we're looking there is to take, and what we're actually doing in the county also is we're paying off, we'd like to pay off our 2016 road bond that we had and go ahead and leverage that for the next 15 years, because that's about 1.5 pennies out of the 32 pennies. So maintaining it around that, but being able to give some relief to the edit fund and the TIF fund, because we've got a tremendous amount of projects.
You saw that on when I last spoke to you about that big 11 by 17 sheet of all the capital improvements that we've got going on here in Avon. So we'd like to be able to do that. And exactly what we're doing in Hendricks County, we're paying off 2 of them so that we can leverage it for their new highway facility. But keep the pennies that we're using from the 32 pennies relatively the same. So we've built that in. As you can see, also, we are working very diligently with the TIFs. You know, Larry, I think I came about 20 years after you, so maybe 15. But I know you very well because I watched every one of those go up. And so one of those malls or strip centers, whatever you want to call them. And so, you know, we're trying to work with those TIF districts, and that economic development really has built and helped us address the capital and will help us really address our new facility that we're putting at Easton Gray. So the budget you will see there is less, but we are using that for a lot of the debt service on the new facility so that we don't have to go to the taxpayer for the new facility. And we're using our ARPA funds also. So all in all, I guess I'll pause and ask if there's any specific questions on any of the numbers that you see in front of you. The big challenge is we're putting 100% faith in Shelby that she can, you know, because our Parks Department is relatively new at the new level. And so you see that coming in. And so as long as we have the revenue to support that, we'll continue to be able to maintain that level. That's the only one that has a little bit of speculation to it because we're counting on the revenue, which you know, you're new in the parks business on that part. And so we had only about 6 months, maybe a year of information on the revenue side there. So a lot of work, a lot of team members. So now we're bringing in the most valuable team member, which is the town council, and asking for at least, again, this is round 1 maximums. And one other thing, we would like to go before the DLGF. The DLGF believes that we will qualify again for a growth appeal, and that is built into the $9 million number. Again, remember, the maximum levy can only go up 4%. The growth appeal could be between $300,000 or $400,000. That will not put us over and above at all the growth that will probably be achieved in assessed value. Meeting with Nancy yesterday, Nancy Marsh, the auditor, she thinks it will be as strong as 10+%. We're projecting around 10 at this point. So we've got a lot of momentum. We've got a lot of great things to do. And I guess I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Garitas? Mr. Holland?
Quickly, if you can you break down the general fund, the 9 million, who's getting how much of that of each?
Oh, that's in our form ones. We can go over that with you. It's a bunch of different departments that
Yeah.
make up that one number.
Microphone.
So you have police, you have planning and building.
So do you know what the police is, just offhand, since you mentioned it?
Sean, you know your budget? Just
About 5 million of the 9. It's a very large percent. And that's even in Gateway now, Julie, you could print it off from Gateway too. But yeah, we didn't have normally in this first meeting, we kind of go over the top numbers, and then, as you know, there'll be a lot of work on the individual numbers.
Just want to know where we were starting from. So that's all I had, Greg.
Yeah, they're usually at least half, more than half.
Question I have is your LRS fund drops at the ending balance in 24 is $1,130,000, but we're only putting in our budget $580,000. Is revenue stream shrinking? Is that why it's going?
LRS really kind of about holds its own at best. It gets the same amount pretty much every year. And so on that one, I believe, Ryan, that's one that we're using stronger this year. And so then we're backing off of it for next year. And so that's why, so the balance went down a little bit, but the 500 and the 580, when we have a community crossing grant, we match it up first with LRS and NVH restricted. You do not see the restricted fund because it's contained within the MVH fund. As you know, we have to have two funds by the state for recording, but for budgeting, we have one fund called MVH. So we strategically move those as we need and try and keep them well spent, because it is well known that next year a couple things may happen. There is a lot of momentum on probably capping the growth quotient to 2.5%. Probably having referendums on any type of bond issue going forward, and also then basically looking and opening up the entire funding formula on road funding. So we've worked very closely with Ryan, make sure we're utilizing the resources that the state earmarked for roads, and we're using that, so they can't say we've given you that extra money that they supposedly gave us, many moons ago, and not use it. We are employing it, and that's how we strategically move it around between the road funding funds.
Other questions for Mr. Garrett?
Hey, Greg, I might share one thing really quick with you, just to the MVH and the LRS. If you guys recall, Greg's exactly right. We got the Community Crossing Matching Grant Fund. If you guys remember, it was in the second half of the year, so the project rolled into the following year. And so it probably artificially made our fund balance look high in 2023 because it had excess money in it, but then we just spent it. So while it looks like it's a declining fund balance, it's probably just because the money from the previous year rolled in.
But it's very stable.
It's very stable.
Pretty
I was
much
gonna say,
the
that's
same number.
We're pretty much typically recommend spending what our revenue is bringing in. And then Bill, to answer your question, last year, the police budget was $5,779,000 of the 8.12. And this year, and we'll share this with you guys more in detail at the next council meeting, they're proposing $6,571,000 of the $9 million.
And remember, we gave you all the detail on the 24 line items are within your sustainability that we gave you in June. And we already have a draft of the new sustainability coming with the 2025 numbers. So that will have all the line by line items, both revenue and expenses. Revenues are really the key when you set a budget. So we put a lot of emphasis over the last couple of weeks on revenues. The department heads put a lot of emphasis on the expenses, and then we meet. So.
Well, and when you look at your fund balances, fortunately for us, most of them continue to go up. But there's going to be a point in time as in our TIF districts start to go away, they're not going to go up. And as we continue with the growth that we have, the assessed value continues to grow up. So as we just do a budget for 1 year, we almost need to be doing a 3-year budget to see how those things will all come into play.
Which, as you know, with the sustainability, that's exactly what we do. So we'll have the updated 25 budget in there, and then we will look at 26, 27, 28, because I will guarantee you it will be challenges going for everybody in Indiana will have challenges going forward. Because revenue could take a little bit of hit. So.
Anything else from Mr. Garretaz? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is the awarding of a quote for vehicle purchase. Shelby?
Me again. Shelby Pride, Parks and Recreation Director. You have a memo in front of you. It was in the packet. The town owns a 2012 Ford F-350 dump bed truck. We shared it, well, Public Works shared it with us. They used to haul salt with it, and we could use it for mulch, rock, things like that we need around the parks. We just don't use it that frequently. Maintenance on it is becoming costly with the age of the truck. So we're looking at trading that in. So you can see there's a quote for the trade-in value as well as the purchase price of a new vehicle. And then additionally, another new vehicle. When we partnered with the Avon Junior Athletic Association, they had no work vehicle. They took their personal vehicles everywhere. So we transferred, my event staff gave them their truck, and so I need a new truck for my event staff to haul things for events, farmers market, stuff that's kind of off-site around here. So our fleet manager, Steve Moore, helped me get bids for these. He contacted Champion Chevy, Andy Moore Chevy, Bill Estes Chevy, Hare Chevy. Andy Moore was the only dealership to provide the quote, which you can see below. The quote for a new 2024 Silverado, including the trade-in value at $22,500. That total is $31,194.25. And then just outright purchasing a 2024 Silverado is $55,606.25. I had budgeted in 2024 to replace this dump truck. If we were to just outright get a new dump truck with a snow plow to completely replace what we have, I had budgeted $90,000. By replacing the dump truck and getting the two vehicles, we'll actually be saving a little over $3,000 from what I had budgeted. So that new total is $86,800.50. We've included the town fleet replacement plan for you to show you what vehicles is being traded and added. And then you've got the quotes there. So I would ask for your recommendation to approve the quotes for the two vehicles, and then recommend approving Andy Moore's trade-in value of the current 2012 F-350, and then recommend the council to allow the clerk treasurer to make payment of these vehicles upon delivery. I think that's it, right, Dan?
Any questions for Shelby?
You mentioned that you had budgeted the 90,000 for the 2024 budget for the 350 dump. And that would also include like a blade. So do we have blades that'll fit these two new trucks, or will there be additional expenses?
The one truck will have a blade. We don't need it. We have blades on all of our RTVs. Which is what we do the trails and our parking lot here with. We just don't have a need for it on both of the new trucks. So.
But we have one that will.
Yes.
We'll use. Okay.
I know we've had difficulty getting vehicles in the past. Are these trucks available?
No. They have to be ordered.
When are we expecting delivery?
We
If this is
don't know.
going through.
In fact, the ones that we approved last meeting, I just talked to the sales guy today, and he said doesn't have a delivery date. So, yeah, we don't know.
Thanks.
The likelihood this could be carried over into next year.
Say that
Did we look at the state is it QPR program?
QBA.
QPA?
Yeah, we always do.
Okay. And then I see you did take it out. You backed out the sales tax.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that math for you guys. You can see on each quote.
Any other questions for Shelby? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the quotes for Andy Moore for the two vehicles as described in the amount of $86,800.50 for the Parks Department vehicle replacement and for the clerk treasurer to make payment.
I'll second.
We have a
Do you need
motion
to-
and a second.
Do you need to add the trade-in? Do you have to approve the trade-in value as well? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Just want to make sure,
Roll
sorry.
call, please.
Second. Okay. Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
For
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the award a quote for the patching project. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, we have our minor project for patching. It's 6 locations. We put it out for a quote. We received 3 quotes back. 2 of them did not return them on our forms, which was clearly required on the cover sheet of our proposal package. So we only have 1 responsive quote, and that was from Baumgartner. So we're recommending that we accept the quote from Baumgartner.
Any questions for Mr. Moore? Mr. Taylor?
Just a reminder to council, I think Mr. Moore points out correctly that you have a non-responsive bid. And so I would like you to make that part of any motion, that because we have the low bidder, apparent low bidder was non-responsive, that you would move to award it to the next lowest quoter. I think that's exactly what you're required to do. So I just remind the council of that.
Any questions for Mr. Moore or Mr. Taylor?
I would like to make one more point, that there was only $340 difference between the 2 quotes.
Somebody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the bid by Baumgartner for the paving as presented.
You want to add the
Yeah,
statement of
what was,
Mr. Taylor?
can you help us again with the text that you wanted, the words you wanted to make sure that we add to this?
That because the apparent low bidder was not responsive to the bid or to the quote specification, the award will be made to the second low bidder.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the second lowest bidder, since our lowest bidder was non-responsive, to Baumgartner Asphalt in the amount of $49,753.50.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2024-12, Carnoustie Fiscal Plan. Mr. Cannon?
Yes, as you guys are aware, whenever we do an annexation, Indiana law requires us to have a fiscal plan prepared for that annexation, which identifies the impact as a result of the annexation. It is also a plan of how we intend to provide services to the area once it's annexed. Greg Garitos, who just left, is the one who prepared the fiscal plan. He did the fiscal plan for Carnoustie and for the area east of County Road 400 East. And those are in your packets, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cannon? If there are none, we need a resolution for 2024 and approval.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 2024-12 Carnoustie fiscal plan as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2024-13, Area East of County Road 400 East Fiscal Plan. Mr. Cannon?
Yeah, this is the same thing. The first one was a Carnoustie fiscal plan. The next one is for another annexation we're doing. It's the same thing, a fiscal plan, the impact and how the town intends to provide services to the area once it's annexed. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Cannon?
Remind me which one this one is, Ryan.
This is the area, it's just north of County Road 100 North. So it's a couple of farms and several homes in Liberty Meadows. Sorry, 100 South. I apologize. Yeah. In 400 East. It's right across from where the new middle school is being built.
Any other questions? Somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt resolution 2024-13 Area East of County Road 400 East fiscal plan as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland.
4.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2024-14, approve lease and accept assignment of RBI Factory. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, you conducted a public hearing on the assumption of the lease for the RBI factory by the Parks Department. And so your next step is to approve this resolution, which would allow the town to assume the current lease, RBI lease, as it has been entered into and amended once, and to consent to the assignment of it from RBI Factories to us. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? We need a motion then?
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2024-14, approving the lease and accept the assignment for the RBI factory on Kingston Street.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Bill Holland.
4. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2024-15, adopting into Kroger opioid settlement agreement.
Yes, this is the most recent opioid settlement case, which is called the Kroger case. You've done these before, but this just has you opt into that settlement regime so that you can receive compensation. These cases are really led by the attorneys general of several states. And I think we've had 3 of these so far. This is the most recent one. Of course, the reason that you opt in is because hiring your own law firm to pursue these cases against such large defendants would be expensive and difficult. So this has worked out pretty well for us. So you will see attached to the resolution is the participation form, which provides the basic information. And then once the settlements are approved, we receive the money generally through the state. The money's distributed to the state's attorney generals, and we get that money from that. Sometimes the money has restrictions, sometimes it doesn't, but this would let us participate in the Kroger settlement. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move we adopt Resolution 2024-15, opting into Kroger opioid settlement agreement as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Bill Holland.
4. Next item on the agenda is the final reading of ordinance 2024-25, zoning amendment 24-04, Wawa. Linda.
Thank you. Again, Linda Albrand, Planning Director. This is a rezoning petition for property at the intersection of Dan Jones and 100 North to rezone to C2 and C1. C2 for a portion of the property for a Wawa, and then C1 for 2 other additional lots that they're proposing to be developed under the ordinance with no known users at this time. Just to step back in history for a bit, when this was filed in February, it was proposed as 2 residential lots, which are the 2 at the intersection for C2, and that was 3.45 acres. The initial recommendation that came from the previous planning staff was approval of that petition. Went to Plan Commission one time and was continued because the Plan Commission wanted to know what was going to be developed on the additional lot that was not going to be the Wawa. In between that time, or the first hearing of the Plan Commission and now, or on the second meeting of the Plan Commission, staff recommendation was reevaluated, and the recommendation for the C2 portion, or the C2, was unfavorable from the planning staff due to the comprehensive plan primarily. Following that, additional land was added to the petition. It went from 3.45 acres to 4.72 acres, which then compromised, or was comprised of 4 residential lots at that intersection. In the staff report, you received this map that the petitioner provided to you. which shows how the breakdown would be for what they're proposing as two different zonings. A C2 zoning for the gas station convenience store and a C1 zoning, which would be two developable lots for C1 designation. Staff reevaluated that request and still made the determination that the C2 was too intense for the comprehensive plan recommendation. So I want to touch on the comp plan recommendation for a minute. There are two commercial recommendations in the comp plan. One is for area retail and one is for neighborhood retail. And this specific site recommends neighborhood retail. Neighborhood retail, as outlined in the plan, is for commercial serving the immediate surrounding neighborhood. Area retail, in comparison to neighborhood, area retail is for a larger area. It's a destination. It's meant for destination commercial, and it is for traveling public, so meaning people traveling through the town and not the neighborhood around the immediate area. Wawa does tend to draw customers from a larger area than just the immediate surrounding area. And then also due to the auto-centric type of use that a gas station convenience store is, the traffic that it brings, the 24-hour operations, noise, light, that sort of thing, we thought that it did not meet the comprehensive plan recommendation for neighborhood commercial. At that time, our primary opposition to C2, and I want to make sure this is clear, was not solely focused on Wawa. It was focused on the C2 category. And when we look at a rezoning, we look at the entire zoning district and what is permitted in that district. And a C2 doesn't just permit a gas station, it permits other things like a auto repair, auto sales. So you could have cars sitting out there for waiting for repair or for sale. It also would allow contractors business. So any kind of contractor that has storage of supplies or trucks or that sort of thing that we didn't think would be particularly appropriate near a church, school, or other residential. Just yesterday, the petitioner submitted to us, and I provided to you this chart. I want to explain the chart real quick, because it's not, I don't think, super clear. The chart shows two columns. One says C1 and one says C2. Those are straight out of the ordinance. So that is what is permitted with a P or permitted by special exception with an S for C1 and C2. Then there is a third column that's called proposed uses. And that's what the petitioner submitted to you is what they would be willing to commit to be permitted on these three proposed commercial lots, both the C2 and the C1 uses. And essentially it's taken out several of the C2 uses that staff was concerned with. So it has removed the automobile repair and automobile sales, and it has removed the commercial contractor, commercial building contractor. Has that improved this petition? It has significantly. It does take away a lot of our concern about what uses could go on this property. Should Wawa not develop, or should Wawa go away in a year or two, or even a decade or two? Has it changed our recommendation? It has not. We still look to the 5 criteria that the state statute makes us look to and makes the council look to when considering a rezoning request. And I want to go through those 5 criteria for you. I just want to also have you keep in mind that rezoning criteria are 5 things that you would consider in their totality when considering a rezoning request. They are not like findings for a variance where they don't have to meet every single one. You're just considering the totality of those things. So the first criteria is the comprehensive plan. Again, the comprehensive plan recommends neighborhood commercial. We would suggest that a gas station, convenience store with 24-hour operations is not a neighborhood retail use, but rather an area retail use. The second criteria is the second criteria you need to consider are the current conditions and character of the current structures and uses in each district. The commercial storage business to the south was noted earlier. That is, while it is a 24-hour business, it does not have the same activity that a gas station convenience store would. And we don't think that use should be looked to provide guidance to what should happen at the corner property. The corner property has a church, a school, a substation, and then residential uses. And we don't think that criteria has, that criteria number 2 has not been met for this rezoning application. Criteria 3 is the most desirable use for which the land in each zoning district is adapted. We would submit that the proposed use is not the most desirable use for the site. We do think some commercial at this intersection would be appropriate if it was neighborhood supporting and not as impactful as a 24-hour operation or a very high traffic generating use, that it's an auto-centric use. Criteria 4 is the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. We don't have any reason to believe that the impact of property values of the zoning change, or the property values would be impacted by the zoning change. And the final one would be the responsible development and growth of the area. Again, this is a auto-centric use, and our concern is the residential uses further east, and then an auto-centric use is going to generate the need or the desire to have more rezonings for auto-centric high traffic uses further east of this site. The Planning Commission heard this rezoning petition on June 24th. They made an unfavorable recommendation to you by a vote of 4-2, 4 against, and then 2-4. I want to go back to the permitted use table real quick, and this is more of a housekeeping issue should you choose to approve this rezoning tonight. There are a few issues with it. On the first page, under basic utilities, utility major impact, they've listed that to be a permitted use. And you'll see that that's not permitted in C1, so it could not be a permitted use on all of these properties. We wouldn't want it there anyway because major impact utility is sanitary sewer treatment facilities and solid waste facilities. So we would like that to be stricken. Then under education, schools, vocational, again, you see that's permitted in C2, but not in C1, and you can't add a use. If you're rezoning to C1, you can't add a use into C1 through a zoning commitment. So that would only be permitted in C2 if this is adopted, or could be stricken. I'll let the petitioner's representative address that. And then the same issue under office, dental, medical, and standard office. Those two would need to change to special exception to be in line with C1. If that didn't make any sense to anybody, I can go over it again. Finally, I provided to you a list of commitments. So it came with a cover letter and then our commitment form after it that lists 5 commitments that the petitioner's representative provided today. We questioned them because they verbally made promises to the Plan Commission, but they had not provided anything to us in writing yet. and we didn't know whether they were intending to provide it in writing or not. So we posed that question to them, and they did provide this to us today. So they do propose to provide written commitment should the rezoning be approved, and they've outlined them there for you in those 5. Staff has no issues with commitment 4 or 5. 1 through 3, generally okay, but they're essentially not enforceable because hours of 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. are not going to be enforced by the staff. So those are provided to you and should be taken into consideration should you approve this rezoning tonight. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. The petitioner's representative is here with a presentation for you tonight.
Any questions for Linda? Let's have the petitioner come forward if he'd like to at this time.
She's switching it over.
Okay.
Good evening. As a housekeeping matter, my name is Ray Basili. I'm counsel for the petitioner, 13 North State Street, Greenfield, Indiana. We have a couple that was at a back to school night that wanted to be here for the initial public presentation portion. Is it possible to allow them to speak very briefly? I know that's sort of normal on this, but we'd at least ask.
They were part of your presentation, or?
No, they're part of the public. They missed the initial public presentation part because they were at back to school night and they just got here, and we just, if it's possible to give them a minute to speak, we'd appreciate it.
I'll decline that.
Okay. All right. So I'm counsel for the petitioner, and I was asked to address one specific thing was touched on by Ms. Albran, and that is the comprehensive plan, the interplay between that and the zoning ordinance, and specifically this neighborhood retail issue. And what I want to emphasize to you is that there is nothing in the comprehensive plan or the zoning ordinance that says that neighborhood retail is affixed and assigned to any specific zoning regulation. So whether it's C1, C2, there's nothing in either of them that officially tie those together and that would prevent the town council from finding that a C2 use, a proper C2 use, could be considered a neighborhood retail use and be thus in compliance with your comprehensive plan. As I think someone indicated before I had an opportunity to speak, 2 prior planning directors hired by the town of Avon, relied on for their expertise, both looked at this project and agreed, felt the comp plan and zones and recommended of it. And that was before the commitments were made. That was before the additional neighborhood or additional retail or residential space was added to it to move the C2 away from residential, and yet it still found favor. And while I certainly respect Ms. Albran and her opinions, I did want to point out that 2 prior plan directors both found favor with this. Neighborhood retail definition includes in the definition smaller commercial nodes with convenience retail. Convenience retail is Wawa. That is exactly what it is. It's also mentions small grocers and specialty restaurants. That's defined in there as part of the neighborhood retail. That's exactly what Wawa provides. In terms of precedent and commitments, I understand there's a concern about what's going to happen down the road. In this instance, they've added the buffer of C1 next to the C2 in between that and residential. So we no longer have an issue where you're setting a precedent and put a C2 right up against residential. And there have been significant proposals given, commitments given to reduction of what C2 and C1 uses can be. And so this would give this town council the ability to hold others to that in the future and thus prevent any negative precedent in the other areas. And with that, I'm going to turn it over and let additional time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So one thing I want to make note of, because it does not happen often in my business, is we had all positive comments from the public with no negative.
State your name and address, please.
I'm sorry about that. Patrick O'Leary. I'm 20411 West 12 Mile Road, Southfield. So again, I want to know all positive comments. We don't get that a lot. So I have Cheryl McElroy here with me. She's the area operations manager from Louisville, Kentucky with Wawa. She'll be over this area. So I'm going to be very quick because she's got a lot of great things to tell you. So excellence does not happen by accident. Forbes and Harvard Business Review, among many others, have recognized Wawa's operational excellence. 7 years versus 7 months. Wawa offers careers, not jobs. The Wawa Foundation has donated $150 million since 2014 and will bring their charitable giving to Avon. We are proposing 3 commercial lots to be developed consistent with the comprehensive land use plan neighborhood retail clusters. The property is 2 miles west of IU Health Hospital. Notably, Dan Jones is currently being widened to 4 lanes. The proposed site plan has Wawa on the southwest corner of the property, surrounded by a retail strip center, 24-hour self-storage, and a commercial lot. It is noteworthy that the owner of the residential property, the only residential property bordering this project, is in favor of the project. We have proposed that Lot 1, the Wawa, is zoned C2. However, we are proposing use restrictions that bring it nearly in line with C1 zoning. Lots 2 and 3 are zoned C1, but we have pared down the C1 uses to be more compatible with this location. Avon's comprehensive land use plan identifies 6 clusters for neighborhood retail with no limitations on zoning or hours of operation. As a matter of fact, the comprehensive land use plan does not designate zoning at all. Rather, it provides a vision for how the cluster should be used. In this case, smaller commercial nodes with convenience retail. Typical uses include smaller grocers, specialty restaurants, pharmacy, boutique shops, and limited personal services. Wawa is convenience retail. Wawa is a small grocer, and Wawa is a specialty restaurant. In 2017, Avon designated 6 locations as neighborhood retail. 4 of the 6 were vacant or residential, which is largely still the case. The following are the remaining 2 neighborhood retail clusters designated by Avon. County Road 100 and Avon Avenue has C2 zoning and a 24-hour gas station directly bordering residential homes and is 900 feet from a church. The town designated this area as neighborhood retail after the businesses were here. US 36 and Avon Avenue is entirely zoned C2, includes a 24-hour gas station, borders residential, schools, and a church. Again, Avon designated this area as neighborhood retail. This is evidence that neighborhood retail is compatible with C2 zoning, gas station use, 24-hour operation, and proximity to residential churches and schools. We spent 2 years working with Avon staff and arrived at a positive recommendation. The positive recommendation was then reversed, and staff's concerns in the revised report are as follows. Traffic. We submitted a traffic study in October of 2023, revised it in February and April of 2024. This traffic study shows no traffic issues as a result of this project. Avon Planning, Engineering, and their third-party traffic consultants have raised no issues with the study or its findings. Late hours was a concern, and this begs the question, as opposed to what? There are numerous 24-hour businesses that would be allowed if this were C1 zoning. Lighting. Wawa will meet or exceed all of Avon's lighting requirements. Full stop. We will. Trash. What is the difference between trash from a Wawa or trash from any other business? There's a myriad of other businesses that could go here, and certainly they would have people coming in and out and generate trash. On December 21st, 2023, Avon Town Council unanimously approved a UDO amendment regarding gasoline service stations. Our project meets all of these requirements, and more specifically, the requirements for 24-hour operation. Other concerns from residents, staff, and the Planning Commission. Lot coverage. Avon allows 50% lot coverage. Wawa's building and canopy are 18% coverage. Deacceleration lanes were added to Dan Jones and County Road 100 to improve traffic at the roundabout. Cross-access with the commercial property to the south was obtained to promote interconnectivity and alleviate traffic at the roundabout. We agreed to vinyl fence to block headlights on the residential lots. We worked closely with Stan and Amanda Wright, the only residential neighbor, and developed a plan that screens their property from the project and turned them from against the project to for it. And then lastly, we've offered several restrictions to the C2 and C1 uses. And I think there were some Scribner errors that Linda pointed out. I'm wide open to eliminating those to, I was not thinking of a sewage treatment plant at this intersection. So with that, I want to turn it over to Cheryl and talk a lot about Wawa.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl McElroy. Do you need my address as well? 1695 Cumberland Lake Circle, Louisville, Kentucky. First of all, your town is beautiful. Thank you for hosting us tonight. My job with Wawa is an area manager. So essentially, I'm in charge of people, community, and business. And by the look of your town, it's an area that we definitely want to do business in. And I can understand the why you wouldn't. Because the C-store, people think convenience store, that's just not what we are. Wawa has been, we started out as a dairy 60 years ago. 27 years ago, we happened to get into fuel, and it's wonderful, it's great. I've been with Wawa for 20 years. My daughter works for Wawa, my son worked for Wawa, my father was retired from the United States Air Force, worked for Wawa till the day he passed away. We are an employment brand that welcomes everyone. We are associate-owned. We change lives. My life, the life of my children was changed by Wawa. The first thing I do when I come into a community is say, how can we impact it? What can we do to make it better? And when I came to your community today, I was like, wow, it's across the street from a church. That's what we do. Right now, I serve on the board of directors for the Wawa Foundation. We accept grants, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. This is not what I do. We accept grants and we grant bids, and we want to help our communities and just be a part of everything. I saw people grilling up there. That's what we do. Easter, holidays, we encompass the community. We bring at least 40 jobs to one site, and those jobs are normally filled by people in the community. We offer college tuition. When I, as an area manager, walk onto a building site, the first thing I do is look at the experience. Is it clean? Does it represent the community? Normally, our communities and our stores take on whatever is in the community. And your community is beautiful. And I know it would be employed by the people who live here. And I'm not sure of what you think a Wawa is, but I know for sure that it's definitely a community store. When you go in, and especially at night, the 24-hour business, it looks very simple. You come in, you order a hoagie, you have coffee, but it's not about that. It's about being there for our first responders, being there for our nurses, being there for people who have somebody passed away. My father worked for Wawa. He passed away his last day of work. There was a hospital right next door that we went to. We were able to go to the Wawa afterwards. Who knew him? He had worked there for 16 years, and he was part of that community. He was the mayor of Lewis. So, and he only joined Wawa because I encouraged him to, because he didn't want to babysit grandkids. So I would tell you, it's clean. It's maintained. Every hour we have walks that we do to maintain the trash. We have enclosures. You don't see it. Again, this is not what I do. Our purpose is to make sure that you feel comfortable with your family shopping and working in our stores. And I can tell you, if I have the pleasure of being the area manager of this store in Indiana, I would look forward to making sure that the standards of the community are upheld. And I'm not certain about zoning, but I can tell you who we are as a company, and we're a people company first. We put every decision we make around people. So I don't know if you have questions for me regarding the operations end of it. I thought that you might tonight, so I'm open to anything you may have to ask.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time, and thank you again.
Thank you. Unless you have questions, we have all of us here to answer them if you have.
I have a question. How did you pick this location? And the reason why I ask that is because to me, location, location, location. And how did you come to this location?
I think I'll take a shot. So when we originally landed in the market, we looked at 36. 36 is very intense. It's very crowded. We identified this based on the comprehensive land use plan. We did believe that it was a reasonable use at this location. We still do. And it fits in the neighborhood. There is a lot of traffic there. You have roads being widened. And I think one of the goals, if not one of the primary goal of the comprehensive land use plan was to alleviate traffic off of 36. I think that's one of the stated things as I remember it. And we believe we're a great part of doing that. We offer food services. We sit between two hospitals. We're across from schools. Wawa is a favorite for moms and kids and dads, whomever it may be, picking up kids from schools before soccer, grabbing the sandwich, grabbing the drink in the morning, running late, have to grab something, going to a doctor appointment. It's a great asset to schools and Wawa is to schools and schools are to Wawa. It goes both ways. So, and this definitely fits the neighborhood mantra of Wawa. So hope I answered it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner?
I don't think so.
Mr. Taylor, we've already gone through the 5 criterion with Linda. Do we need to do that again?
You may, you obviously want to focus on those factors in making your decision. And I also, it's been said, but I think it's worth repeating that there's been a lot of discussion of some of the 5 factors more than the others. But as Linda said, it's a totality of those 5 factors. You're to weigh all 5 and see, just based upon all of them, does that make you lean toward approval or denial? It's not a scoring of so many factors against the others, totality. And each rezone petition that you consider is complex, stands on its own. So I think you just should, again, focus on those 5 in their totality. And that's the best advice I would have for you.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions in regards to any one of those 5 criterion that you want to need clarification on?
I have questions about the criteria.
Okay.
Since you're on the planning commission. It is. So those were the criteria that the planning commission looked at, and the reason why they made their vote of 4-2, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Was there anything else that swayed them one way or the other?
Well, location. I was one of the individuals on the plan commission that voted against it or gave it an unfavorable recommendation. Now, with that being said, they've come tonight with some commitments here that they didn't have when we were at the plan commission. So I think that was for some of the reason why I was against it. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else that we've missed on.
About ingress, egress?
Well, it's at a roundabout, and you look at egress, ingress. Well, we're putting in roundabouts, so that's our town's choice. So we need to live with those decisions. So the egress, ingress is going to be right in, right out. Now, granted, I think through this development, they have access to the self-storage facility that they can get in and out of as well. That could then either We'll probably go left or right. That driveway lines up probably with Kingsway, so you can go left or right on Dan Jones, or you could possibly even go left in, I don't know the name of that subdivision, but you go through there.
So you can go left on Dan Jones from the south exit.
Through the self-storage
Not through this
location,
property.
not through their location. There
But you
would be
can-
right
you can
in.
Go south.
If you go through another development.
Right.
And to clarify, it's just for now. When we do the road improvements in the future, that'll have a median in there and that'll be right in, right out only, I believe. But at the same time, even then, you could turn north, hit the roundabout and eventually take and head back south, correct?
Thank you, Greg.
I do have some questions. So I'm going to start with criterion for conservation of property value. I would agree with this, that I don't think this rezone would have, I think it would have greater than minimal impact. And I want to make the point said that this council had a vision for many years now to diversify our tax base. We've used that short phrase to grow more commercial and industrial developments. And we usually don't get many commercial rezones. We tend to have gotten more residential requests. So I feel like this is in line with the vision that we've wanted to receive more of these. So I actually think it'll have more than a minimal impact, but at the time, the goal is to improve this. So it's already meeting that. But I'd like to ask Linda, is it all right if I can get you back up to the mic? I'm sorry. And if I can talk about the responsible development and growth. And there's an assumption that's made in here that I'd like to get some of your feedback on. Saying that if we do zone this to C2, that would lead to future requests of the properties nearby to natively want to C2. Is there any basis in that? Where does that come from? And further, do we still then have the authority to deny or grant whatever rezone requests would come in the future?
I'll take the first question, the second question first, but you always have the ability to, should the next property that's in line come into rezone, you certainly have the ability to deny that rezoning. Rezonings are a legislative decision, so that's completely up to the council to approve or deny them. From a planning policy standpoint, when we have lots that front a perimeter road, an arterial road, and not part of a subdivision, once the corner pieces go, the next lots start to come in to be rezoned. And our concern is you pick the highest intense district at that corner, the next ones want to do the same thing. And if you pick one of the highest traffic generators in an auto-centric use at this intersection, auto-centric uses are going to be the ones that are coming in. Instead, if we would get a restaurant, an office, something else commercial at this corner, then we would likely see requests for a similar type of zoning.
If I'm understanding you correctly, you've kind of defined C1 as neighborhood, although that's not explicitly stated, but you've kind of defined C1 as more neighborhood retail and C2 as more area retail.
The zoning ordinance says C1 neighborhood retail. It does
Defines
say
it explicitly.
It does not restrict it, like it doesn't make a correlation from the comp plan to the zoning ordinance, but this one says neighborhood retail, this one says neighborhood retail.
And I've heard you mention a few times that auto-centric uses doesn't necessarily fit in with that neighborhood retail.
Correct.
Yet I would point to our permitted use table, parking lots and garages are a permitted use under C1. So I feel like that's not consistent. Can you speak to that?
I would agree with you that a parking lot is not a neighborhood type of use. And in crafting the C1 district, I would not put parking lot in there, and I'm not sure why a parking lot is in there. I would agree it's an.
This is off to the side. This may be something that we need to address in the future for text amendment change. If I can, I've heard a lot of challenge to 24/7 and the type of use, the times that people might go in here, but I'd also like to point out in our use table for C1, taverns are allowed. I would believe that that would cause, at least our experience with bars in this community that are open 24/7, those are probably our larger call volume from police. And so it would equate to increased crime, increased traffic, et cetera. Can you speak to the difference there? Why would that fit more in neighborhood retail versus area?
It's difficult to understand when the districts were created and uses were put into them, why one was put into one district and one was put into another district. Historically, taverns have been in neighborhoods if you go from the beginning of zoning, yes. And I do agree with you that hours of operation, noise, trash, those are problems of that use. I would say a tavern would not be ideal at this intersection, but it is permitted in the C1. It's not where I would put it if I were crafting the zoning ordinance today.
Is that another one that we might, again, off to the side, is that another one we might need to be addressing in text amendment to?
The C1,
Sort of bring it
C2,
along.
C3, I think needs a big overhaul, but without, getting into the value of what the zoning that people already have, not taking away, uses, but crafting it a little bit to make them more palatable uses. So for instance, a tavern is permitted, but it couldn't be within 500 feet of a residence, something like that. Put in more standards for those types.
Or a school.
Right, well, of course, the school and church. So there's different ways we can go about it without, you want to be careful when you take out uses from a zoning district because you're taking away value from people that already zone that district. So we want to craft it to get the outcome that we want, as opposed to just cutting the use from a district.
I'm going to jump to, I think criteria 1 is comp plan. I think the petitioners mentioned quite a few places, or maybe it was remonstrator or whatever the opposite of a remonstrator is. As those in favor of this petition spoke to that there are plenty of places around in our comp plan that are currently zoned C2 that have facilities very similar to this. And I would argue has a far closer connection to residential, which seems to have been the chief concern to going in this location. Can you speak to why those are okay and this one is not?
Well, I would say that they are not okay. For the Speedway came up, the Speedway is zone C1. It's a non-conforming use in the zoning district. How it became C1 on, when it is a C2 use, I didn't do the deep dive research onto it. And yes, it is next to residential. If that use were coming in today, I would recommend fairly strongly, because of how close that neighborhood is, that it be denied. So just because the Speedway exists in its current location in a 24-hour operation next to residential doesn't mean it's the ideal use for that location. It doesn't mean that that's how that should have developed. I can't go back and change time, but we don't want to continue a problem that we've identified into new zoning at new intersections.
That's fair. Trying to come up with the last one. You guys welcome.
I have a question.
I have
for
many
Ryan.
questions, so go ahead though.
Ryan, was the Speedway put in, was that county that approved that, or was that town of Avon?
Gosh, as I've worked here since 1999 and it has always been there. So if I don't know for certain, but my guess is that it was zoned by the county and put in by the county, not the town.
That would be my answer too, and I believe that's what Mike Tully told me, but since I wasn't positive, I didn't answer.
Bill.
So, and this is for Dan. Are you still over there? Yeah. Greg has indicated that there's been several changes made since this was presented to the Planning Commission. Is there a way to send it back to them to see if these changes make any difference in the vote?
No, it's your baby now. And it's a fair question. It's just that The statute says that you have so many days in order to approve or reject. And so it gets back to you now. But Linda mentioned this, there have been these proposed commitments which would limit uses, and then also what I call, I don't know, performance standards, but this letter which contains commitments about audio deliveries, trash removal, light trespass, and a fence, which is a screening fence. And so that's what's new. And I think when you asked earlier about, what the Planning Commission was concerned about, I think one way to summarize some of it was they were concerned about impacts, how this would impact adjacent residential uses. And Greg, you please feel free to speak up if you don't feel like that's fair, but I think that was one of the concerns. They wanted to protect area residents so much. And if you think about it, that's really what was much of the discussion was about. And it's a little different than talking about the definition of words. But I think that a lot of the Planning Commission discussion, remonstrators, statements focused on how, is this going to be loud? Is there going to be traffic? Is there going to be light? Just how is it going to affect residential neighborhoods?
Well, I think to add one thing to it, they had the outlots there that we didn't know what was going to go there. And so at the time we asked for prohibitive uses, but we didn't know what those were. And we did it probably a few weeks ago, a month ago, where somebody wanted something rezoned and they didn't know what was going to go there and we denied it. Well, so since that meeting, they've come back now and given us this list of prohibitive uses. So that's already a step in the right direction. So we know when this is built, they're more than likely going to probably sell those outlots to somebody to put something there. And we want to make certain that we know what's going there. So that's, to me, that was a big hurdle.
The only other thing I have is, you hear that gas stations, 24-hour locations of any kind, bring with it an element of society that tends to break more laws than the people going to Kingsway, let's say, on Sunday morning. And I was just wondering if any of our chiefs in the back of the room might be able to shed light on anything like that, or the history of locations within our community and how that's played out over the past.
Well, having been here for about nearly 30 years, 14 of those years were investigations. The last 10 years, I've been the chief. I worked a number of cases at the Speedway gas station. There were everything from robbery to thefts, domestic violence. It's not just been contained to those type of establishments, but also other gas stations in the area. Some of them were part of the presentation. We've had robbery, just every one presented tonight. There's been at least one robbery there. I wouldn't want to deny someone based completely on that. That's your decision, but I think you do have to consider when we get to that level of seriousness of crime, if we're bringing in more businesses that could bring that to, not to their fault. It's just the nature of that business. And unfortunately, we have had our share of those. Now, no one has come to me and asked me for any statistics, but it's certainly something that we could get for businesses included in the presentation, as well as other businesses that are similar. And I think that you could probably draw your own educated conclusion from those from that data. But it would take some time to compile all of that.
Thank you.
Jason, any questions?
Was Kingsway contacted about this? Was there somebody here to speak on their behalf or any, I didn't see a letter from them.
So we spoke with the business manager of Kingsway Church, very, very positive, sent us an email saying that he was thrilled to have a 24-hour business across the street that could keep eyes and ears on his church while they were gone. He did bring that up to the elders, pulled back on that comment and said that we will not be against you at all. We won't show up at any meeting against you, but they didn't want to get involved in a formal letter. And we didn't, even though I'm telling you about it, we didn't feel it right to give you the initial email from him when they came back with that. So may I say one thing on, if I may, as long as I got the microphone? If I recall, at the Planning Commission meeting, there was a motion, and I thought there was quite a bit of momentum, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to be argumentative, to approve this if we had restricted hours. And so I'm not sure that the 5 criteria and the different uses and those things were the issue. I think there was a big issue, at least for part of the meeting. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that transpire, but for part of the meeting was the 24-hour. And I wanted to just, make that point. One other point, as long as I can. I think there's a big, big, big difference, enormous difference between Wawa, how they operate, and a Speedway or a Circle K. Wawa never has, and I really think Cheryl should say it, Wawa never has less than 3 people at a store. And I think the police chief would say that many of these things are significant difference in someone being encouraged to rob a store. And I don't know if you want to take a minute or if you're interested in hearing more about that from Cheryl, but again, Wawa is not your typical gas convenience store. They just simply aren't. And so the way they operate compared to, you could have a Waffle House there, right? C1 restaurant, 24-hour operation, that could be robbed. That's got trash. That's got, I could have Waffle House next to Denny's, next to another 24-hour operation. I believe all of those would be allowed. And so, they could get robbed and maybe have some undesirables there at night as well. Fist fights, kids, that sort of stuff.
Would it be possible for me to address the precedent, just the legal precedent issue?
I'll give you one more time. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Again, Ray Basili, counselor for petitioner. Ms. Albrand brought up the precedent issue and the concern about what might happen if a C2 is approved on this corner down the road, physically down the road, down 100. As Mr. Zuzan has pointed out, the petitioner has made significant changes and I think improvements to the petition that were not intended to address that issue specifically, but directly do. First off, it's a C2 on the hard corner, but it's C1 next to it. So the next lots down from there going to rezoning. There already is a precedent for a C1 going anywhere else further on there. So this is not an issue where we've got a C2 that's going to encompass that entire corner. Second, if you look at the commitments, that C2 lot is barely a C2 lot. It's a C1 use that allows a gas station on the corner. But if you look at all the other uses that are excluded, it basically is the equivalent of a C1 that is going to allow a gas station. And if you look at the C1 lots, again, as you look at the commitments, those commitments even further pare down the permitted uses in C1. And so to the extent this council has a concern in the future about somebody to the east or anywhere else in that area coming in and wanting a full-blown C2 or even a full-blown C1, you would establish precedent by supporting this petition and being able to tell them, well, yeah, we did approve this because we thought it was an appropriate use for that corner, but look at what we made them do. Look at the limitations that we imposed on them. you're even further into the residential area, and we're going to impose at least those restrictions on there. So to the extent that there's a concern about precedent and what a favorable vote tonight might do, I just wanted to point out that this already comes with those protections to prevent exactly what Ms. Albrand's concerned about. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Greg, I've got one question for the petitioner, but first I want to make sure I've touched base on criterion 2, which is current conditions, character of the current structures. I disagree that the existence of the storage use to the south does not guide the development of this. We're making an argument at the same time that if we put C2 here, that's going to then natively drag out the rest to be area retail. We're already seeing commercial in that area. In that particular intersection, I think that this is matching right along with that current character. So not a question, again, that was just a statement. But I do have another question for the petitioner, and it's, would you guys be willing to make some commitments, additional commitments this evening? And I don't believe I'm seeing it here, to limit this particular zone to this particular rezone to the permitted use table C1 designations. But I want to make sure that that is stated for the record, that you guys would be willing to make that commitment, that this particular rezone to C2 would only, and help me out here, Linda, to make sure I'm saying this right, would only allow the permitted uses of C1 plus this particular designation. Am I saying that right? That's covering it. I also want to add the additional uses that Ms. Albrand did recommend, to remove from use of C1 utility minor impact, excluding even a special exception, to remove from use schools, public and private, as a permitted use. And I think that was it. Am I?
I think it was vocational.
That's vocational.
Was it vocational? Forgive me.
Yeah.
Schools vocational from that use as well. Can I get someone from Wawa represent to agree or not agree to that commitment?
Yes, we agree. That is exact. The ones that you mentioned on the C1 were just an oversight. That wasn't an attempt to leave those open there. So yes, absolutely.
Understood. I've got one more. You've made some commitments on record, and I commend you. Those hours of operation seem a little odd. They're varied, but we have some noise ordinances. We have some uses, some mentions in our zoning ordinances to limit the 24/7 use for a gas station from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. The audio at the pumps, you've agreed to limit from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. No deliveries between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and trash removal not to occur between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Would you be willing to commit to expand those limitations to 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. to exclude them from that time slot as well?
Let me address the trash issue first, because I think there may have been a mention of that in the packet, and if not, the trash service is something that we don't have as much control over as the other things. It's picked up by a private company. We certainly can request that they not pick it up during certain times, but my concern is that I don't know that we would have the control over that we would over vendors, for example, that are bringing Pepsi onto the site or things like that. There's only one, maybe two trash vendors that are available to come pick that trash up. And I just don't know so we would certainly commit to doing everything we can on that.
Stay there for a second. I've got a question then for you, maybe Ryan or Dan. Is there anything stopping trash removal from within neighborhoods within our ordinances between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. as it sits right now?
No, but what I find the response curious, because they've offered a commitment on trash removal of 1 to 4. So that was some thought. I mean, that's been offered.
I think the idea is that it's very unlikely in those hours that there's going to be trash removal, just because that's not normally when trash removal happens on commercial spaces. When you get outside of there and you start talking about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, you start seeing more of that sort of trash removal in there. It's not an attempt. We would prefer that it occurred during the day too, and we don't have to even have this issue. And we can absolutely make that commitment. the concern is just whether we have the authority and the ability to control what the trash service is going to do and when they do it. And I don't know the answer that we have the ability to do that.
I was just confused. You offered it as if you had some information about it and you don't want to expand it. That's your prerogative. It just seemed, I mean, but you offered that.
Yeah, I mean, do we have the ability to go beyond that?
I don't know, we're getting really caught up into like a deep dive into operations. So I think what he's trying to say is that there is a caveat with that, but Wawa will require and enforce the best they can a restriction, to answer your question, on deliveries based on the hours that you said, and I believe it was 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Is that correct? We're okay with that, with one single exception. Wawa is got incredible hoagies, and they have fresh bread every single day, and that bread does need to be delivered in that early hour. So it'll be no deliveries with the exception of fresh bread, if that's can be worded. And I believe I put that in, I believe that was worded that way in my restrictions. We're okay with the trash pickup, and we are okay with restricting the audio at the canopy to be restricted for those hours as well.
It with the exception of fresh bread, was not included. And I don't believe that's going to add noise to the rezone, which is the chief concern here.
I'm fine with that. I mean, we're.
We can enforce it anyway. I mean,
You know, they said it was unenforceable or hard to enforce, and we're making them do things that the 24/7 a mile down the road doesn't have to do. So I'm fine.
I would just qualify the unenforceable. Everything is enforceable. I know that's not typical hours for town employees, but photographic evidence from anybody who sees it is enforceable. I agree with Linda. It's very challenging, but let's not say it's not enforceable. I believe it is.
I retract that.
Thank you.
Like I said, I was on the plan commission. I was one of the ones that said unfavorable. They have convinced me with their commitments that they've made here, the permitted use table, the 5 items that they've outlined. You've listened to the neighbors, as the gentleman indicated. Nobody came forward and is against it. I look at the comp plan. This is C2. Everything else in that comp plan is C1. We're meeting that. We put in the prohibitive uses. We're a growing community. We can talk traffic on every deal, but we're not supposed to talk traffic on this deal. And I look at it and I look in, right out. Well, that's what they have to live with, and that's what we have to live with. We're looking to expand Dan Jones Road because that's how we do things. We catch up. And we've built that into that. So I think from when I heard it initially to when I heard it now, it certainly makes sense, and they've made commitments, and those commitments make me feel that they're going to be a business and an active business in our community, and that's what we want. So,
Greg, are you willing to entertain a motion?
is anybody ready to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-25, zoning amendment 24-04, Wawa, as presented with the previously mentioned commitments, excuse me.
And we're just going to add that to that. We're not going to go through each one of them, but it's the permitted use table and then the letter dated August 8th. I don't think there was anything else.
The commitments would be as stated on the record. Some modifications were made. So rather than the letter, perhaps the record will show the agreement by the petitioner. And
does my motion satisfy that?
I think your motion does. I just don't want to say the letter because it's not exactly, if I can, yeah.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, I second. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Bill Holland,
4.
Don Loudon,
I'm going to say against because I still have some concerns about traffic and crime. So Against.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Thank you. Welcome to Avon. Next item on the agenda is the final reading of ordinance 2024-27, Town Code Revision, Article 2-14. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this ordinance makes changes, conforming changes to your emergency management provisions.
Could you please move your discussions outside, please?
There have been significant changes in emergency management since your ordinance was written. As you can see, there's a reference to civil air defense, and that's not what it's called anymore. So these changes just bring you up to date with current law. This is second reading.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Do we have a motion then?
I move that we approve ordinance 2024-27, Town Code Revision, Article 2-14 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Next item on the agenda is the final reading of ordinance 2024-28, Town Code Revision, Article 9.
This ordinance just corrects the name of your current departments. There have been some changes made. This brings that up to date for you and makes other conforming changes in this section. This is second reading.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Roll call, or a motion, please.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2024-28, Town Code Revision, Article 9, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Bill Holland,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Next item is the final reading of ordinance 2024-29, Town Code Revision, D2-15- I think is that 11 or Roman numeral 2?
2, yeah. Yes, this makes changes to the section of your code regarding salary ordinance. It makes two primary changes. First, it has a reference to an old compensation model that you don't use anymore. So it eliminates that and reiterates that the town council makes decisions on compensation. You can choose the method you want. And then in the second part, there is, with the elimination of the town court, there's a deletion of some officers in the town court that are mentioned in this section. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Need a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance 2024-29, the town code revision of D2-15-2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Next item is the final reading of ordinance 2024-30, Town Code Revision, parentheses, funds.
This ordinance makes changes to your cumulative capital development fund. There have been some changes in the law as to how these funds are treated and reestablished each year. So towns are no longer required to reestablish your CCD fund, and therefore that process has been deleted. On the second page, you'll see that there was created some time ago a violation deferral fund, and many towns did the same thing and said that if you had an ordinance violation, you could have a deferral program. Years later, the courts came along and said that deferral programs could only exist for criminal matters and that you couldn't have them for civil matters. And so this just needs to be deleted based upon that ruling. This is second reading also.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Somebody like to make a motion?
I move we adopt ordinance 2024-30, Town Code Revisions, funds as presented.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call, please.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Next reading is the final reading of ordinance 2024-31, Town Code Revision, Article 2-20-2, purchasing.
Yes, this ordinance makes changes to your purchasing rules to conform with the state law for local purchasing rules. It also, in section 2, it names your purchasing agents, and you have changed some titles over the years, and you've created new departments, and you've gotten rid of some titles. So that brings this up to date, makes other changes which conform to 522.8 about, and really restate your practice of obtaining quotes and how that's done, and just following those rules. This is second reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve ordinance 2024-31, Town Code Revision 2-20-II purchasing.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Bill Holland,
4.
Jason Puckett,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4. Next item on the agenda is the introduction of ordinance 2024-32, the Carnoustie annexation. Mr. Cannon?
Yes, this is the introduction to the Carnoustie annexation ordinance. We talked about the fiscal plan a little bit ago, but the Carnoustie annexation is mostly along both sides of County Road 100 South and along both sides of County Road 525 East. It does include the Prestwick Golf Course and some other residential properties kind of in that general vicinity. There is a map in your packets that shows the area of the Carnoustie annexation. It is about 300 acres, and so it's a substantial size annexation. You guys do have to do the introduction, and then we will be advertising for the notice of public hearing, which is the next step in the process, which will occur October 10th. And then you guys will actually have to wait 30 days after that, and then you can consider the final reading of the ordinance in November. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon?
Just glad this is happening.
For the record, then we'll show that we have introduced ordinance 2024-32, the Carnoustie annexation. Moving on to the introduction of ordinance 2024-33, east of County Road 400 East annexation. Mr. Cannon.
Yes, this is following the same timeline as the Carnoustie annexation. This is the area, it's just north of County Road 100 South and east of County Road 400 East. It includes a portion, several homes in Liberty Meadows, and then 2 farms just north of Liberty Meadows. The annexation area is about 60 acres. This is a voluntary annexation, and like I said, it'll follow the same process as the Carnoustie annexation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cannon? For the record, then we'll show that we've introduced ordinance 2024-33, east of County Road 400 East annexation. Next item is legal counsel report. Mr. Taylor.
I have nothing to report to you tonight.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is the second of 2 public comment opportunities. You may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. If you come forward, please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. With nobody coming forward, then we'll close that portion of the public comment and move on to council comment. Anybody have anything? Moving on to council calendar, Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, actually, if you wouldn't mind, give me a little bit of latitude. I did, the next meeting is August 22nd. You guys do not have a work session prior to that, so it's just a town council meeting at 7 p.m. I did also want to just make a brief comment and thank Linda for making the recommendation that she made. She took a lot of heat tonight that I don't know was really fair and that I don't know that I really appreciated from the petitioner. Linda is a professional and that's her job to make a recommendation. It's your guys' decision to determine if that's in the best interest of the town. And so thank you, Linda, for doing that. That's what we want her to do, is regardless of pressure from petitioners, we want her to give you her professional opinion. So thank you, Linda. Appreciate that.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.